Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Um, Today I am just going to show you a little bit of how I go about engineering different projects surrounding um, compliance engineering, or you could say governance engineering or GRC, different titles, different names. But at the end of it, I see it as I'm just engineering, but my mindset is focused on the governance layers and operational layers too, but mostly the governance layers so that we no longer have to deal with paperwork anymore. And, there's tons of platforms out there as far as GRC specific, but when I'm looking at engineering compliance, I look at it as using most of your internal tools, working with your engineers or your developers to use what you have, especially if you have like a cloud environment, whether it's Azure or AWS or GCP. You'll have a GRC specific engineer that can come in, or compliance engineer, whatever you want to name this engineer. They have a unique or a specialized skill set, which is your engineering, but they also have an information security mindset. Because when I think of GRC, even though it's governance, risk, and compliance, you still have to think like someone in the cybersecurity space, right? Because those policies, whether they're security policies or just overall governance policies, usually, from my experience, they still fall under your chief information security officer. So it's still under the realm of cybersecurity. So I just wanted to, just show you how I go about it for those out there that are looking to get into GRC engineering. Um, I will say, I am someone who has built a lot of different things for a long, long time. So my understanding of architecting, my understanding of how to understand code, APIs, a database, maybe a little bit different from traditional GRC analyst. But, since the industry is kind of shifting or has shifted, and especially during this era of AI, because now you're going to have more agentic AI agents that can run almost anything. And some people may not be aware of that, but you got to put your mind, you know, there already. You can't think of it as I'm just trying to save my job, or they don't want, they want to have a bunch of robots. Whether we like it or not, it was coming decades ago. We just now it's here, right? Think of the industrial revolutions here in America. Those have changed over time, and there's other countries that are opening up more to either compete or just enhance their lives. I don't think of technology as something that has to be looked at in a bad way. I think of it as an enhancement, a tool to your life, because that's what we've done as human beings, like forever now. So when I think of engineering, because my mind is always thinking of what else can I build, what else can I do. So some of you out there can look at some of the things that you've already been building, or just tasks that you have at your jobs, and you want to be able to automate those tasks. And like I said, automation isn't new. When Python came out, or as people started to use it like years ago, they started to see that they can automate a lot of stuff. There's a lot of engineers and developers, and maybe on the website, but they've been automating stuff long time ago. So it's not new. When we talk about infrastructure as code, that's a form of automating as well. Now it's just where certain people are seeing it because they feel like it's going to come for their jobs, but it is coming for your job. So either you're going to prepare for it or not. But there's thousands upon thousands, probably millions of different businesses and companies and processes worldwide, people, like worldwide. You can't think of it as just my city, my town where I'm at. this is going on or will go on worldwide. So think of this as how you can, even if it's not GRC stuff, think of how you can go and help someone else in another country, um, to help them enhance their lives. Again, if you hate AI data centers and it's ruining different environments, as people want to see it or feel about it, yes, that is a component, but you can probably create a position or create something to say, hey, this is how we're going to balance that out. This is how we're going to make sure it's not going to continue to affect these communities, or we're going to have these things in check. But you got to understand, people want to innovate, right? They want to innovate. That's how our brains work, whether you're a man or a woman, you're just thinking of innovating. So you can't hold back people who are looking to manifest things that come to them in their dreams, that come to them when they're just sitting and thinking about stuff, when they're reading. You have to allow those people to be rewarded by doing those things, but you can also be the balance, to help make sure that it's not destroying certain areas or environments too, right? And that's going to be a battle. So I'm not here to pick a side. I do personally believe in innovation. I believe in engineering. I believe we as humans are just always going to continue to enhance ourselves, and we've done that for a very, very, very long time since our existence because we're here now, right? So anyway, let's get to this. I want to get off that rant. But let's get to this. So this is how I wanted to go about API-driven risk registers. Now, again, there's GRC tools out there, but this is just to be sort of like a project or a lab, that you can use in order to help you with getting hired, or maybe you're looking to consulting, maybe you're looking to just help out different companies in your area, or you're already working and you want to, make something a better automated process because maybe you know, uh, you have a risk register, but it's just, an Excel sheet and you're just updating it. And maybe your company still doesn't allow a lot of AI tools to be used because they just haven't found the way or haven't a lot of the time to figure out AI governance, and AI governance doesn't have to be approaching a certification for 42,001. When I think of AI governance, I think of it as in general, right? I think of it as both internal use cases and those companies that are going to use it externally. However, it's about responsibility, transparency, data, the risk, so you just don't want someone using Microsoft's Copilot and your company hasn't looked at security controls to ensure that, DLP is still not going to allow certain data to be, used in here, or do we control the data, or your marketing team wants to bring in, an AI tool and to create a marketing video, but it was made in the EU, and your company doesn't uh, certify or follow GDPR rules. So again, when we're thinking about compliance and GRC and risk, those are things that we have to always keep in mind. Even if you're a security architect, when you're architecting, you're still thinking of complying with those policies, right? So if your company doesn't follow GDPR, then you probably got to tell your employees, hey, let's find a tool that probably someone here built, and that gives opportunity for someone here in America, for example, to have a marketing tool like that, and ensuring that the data it stays here and says, hey, this is an option compared to someone who built it out there. So that just giving you some points or some ideas that these tools can be built. Now that we have better, AI based tools AI powered tools that can help us innovate a little bit faster. Now, how I go about this, I have a newsletter coming out, and I wanted to talk about, risk registers because um, when I think of like AI impact assessments and risk assessments, I have been going through another course, and there's a lot of paperwork, still a lot of documentation. And I do have a SaaS product that I am working on that is specific to AI compliance, and a few other frameworks around it. I didn't want to open it up to every framework. I wanted it to be like a niche type of product. Um, but when I think about that, I think about how can I build something, um, build different components, features inside of it. And again, it's not about explaining your features. It's more about how does this help our process, right? How does this help us to cut down time for audits? How can the auditor easily be able to um, you know, see that we are in compliance based on our SOA, right? How do we easily scale up maybe an AI tool that we're using internally, or a tool that we're going to use for our customers because we're a healthcare company that does patient intake with voice AI or something like that? How do we ensure that we can automate this information versus um, having someone write it out or type it out manually in an Excel sheet or a Word doc. I'm not saying those are going away just yet, because there's still a lot of traditional GRC compliance that is going on. It's just everyone hasn't caught up yet, right? But again, you can take these type of ideas and start building off of them. So I just said, hey, an API driven risk register. And I already have a bunch of projects. I have a ton of stuff on here to help me, kind of, I would say, align my ideas better. How I used to think about it, man, I have so many books and notepads of just things I've done. That's why I'm like, I've dived into developing and architecting like for so long. But now that AI is here, it helps me out to get my thoughts out a little bit better, especially what I'm trying to do. So, one thing you can do, again, I just put API driven risk register, but if you're looking to apply for different jobs, you can go to those jobs and to those job descriptions, and copy what they're looking for as far as the technology part or processes that they're looking for that position to do. And then you can just go to ChatGPT, or you can go to Claude, or DeepSeek, whichever one's your favorite, and you can, ask it to help you to come up with project ideas. So I've been doing that since kind of last year. And, I think it's inspired, some other people to look at it that way, so that you won't just be building to build. Because I'm even in the AI development space, where once ChatGPT dropped and the word started to come out that you can build all these cool tools, um, it was just about building anything randomly, right? And some things work, some things don't, But the truth of the matter is, what is the need, right? How does this help us to get compliant, or stay, or have continuous compliance or assurance, right? That's how you gotta approach it. So when you're looking at um, job duties or descriptions, that's the surest way that you can say, okay, I know exactly what they want. I'm going to build it, and then I'm going to promote it on my LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, wherever you feel that you want to promote it. You can do that. So, and I know some people that took the inspiration from me and built an actual AI generator. Again, me personally, I didn't want to do something like that, only because I feel like I have everything I need right here. But maybe it's something that someone else would use, and it's also when you look at it, it's a tool that someone can use, that they don't have to come in here and do all this extra stuff, right? So it's an amazing tool. But me personally, I've already set up my own different projects here in ChatGPT and Claude, and I can just type a few things in, and it already knows what I'm looking for. So the API risk driven risk register. So once I put that in, ChatGPT is pretty much giving me kind of based on what I've already told it how I want them to help me to structure this project spec. So that's what it does. As you see here, this is telling me right now the objective is to build a machine consumable API first risk register, right? It accepts automated risk events from CI/CD pipelines, eval engines, and this is important, especially when you're talking about data platforms, data models, and data going into AI models. This is very important, especially if you're a lead auditor or someone looking to help with ISO 42001. This is something that you want to kind of understand, red teaming. Again, this is one thing that the US government would be requiring. It may be EU too. I have to reread on that. But you before you deploy a chatbot, for example, to your customers, it has to have some type of penetration testing. So, for those out there, this is definitely an opportunity. There's already pen testers out there, but this is definitely an opportunity for you as well. So, again, when things just because jobs end in one area, a lot more is opening because, the other side, there's other stuff. It's just you got to skill up. And monitoring systems. Again, this is another part of ISO 42001 clauses when we're talking about monitoring. Then links a risk to AI's assets, model versions, commits, and deployments. Generates structured evidence. So this is important, especially talking about evidence collection and it being automated, right? Drives automated remediation workflows, supports regulator-ready reporting. Okay, so this is important to me. And again, this is something I've already told ahead of time or just earlier in this particular project. And when I mean project, I mean just the whole chat conversation. Um, that it's going to give me specific things because I designed my own templates to use as well based on my own idea or concept of not only just GRC engineering, but how I wanted to just say, hey, if I was building any project, I want to have a template set up with certain, pieces of that template where all I have to do is add some code, test it out, and deploy it, right? To make it even more faster. And then again, you can work with an IDE and still use AI to help you as well. And then here we have why this is powerful traditional risk registers. So, manual entry, quarterly updates, subjective scoring, my version. So, this is tradition as we are trying to get away from tradition. And that's how I have it thinking and how I think, right? How can I automate it? And again, I'm telling you, there's developers I know from years ago, like I know this one person, and that's how I first came into, understanding automation. He was just like, yeah, it's developers. We'll just get some code, copy it, and, let it run itself. So this is before like true AI, right? But let the code run itself, and we'll just sit down and just relax or sit back. So, again, some people may think you need to like pound it, pound it, pound it, work hard, but that's how your team or you as an individual become burnt out and stressed. And that's why I believe, AI tools are great to enhance your workload, right? And getting things done. Now, the version that this is telling me is it receives events automatically, updates continuously, is version controlled, is evidence linked, is integrated into pipelines. Now, again, my template already has a risk register component to it, but again, I'm just building this as a separate lab just to showcase how to build something like this, right? So the architecture overview, components, the risk register API, which is the core service. And when you're talking about MCP, you know, I've seen MCPs use a SaaS now, so you don't even have to have a whole SaaS website. You can charge, a payment just using an MCP tool, depending how you set it up. But you can set up an MCP tool that allows people to connect to it, right? And they can set up a risk register through it by calling on the API through that MCP tool, right? You have a risk engine, okay? You have your AI asset registry integration because that's a part of 42001, the inventory on all the AI assets. And you can even pull that information from if you have a proxy and again, if some companies are blocking any AI tools, however, I'm wondering if they're blocking, AI tools that some companies use because when ChatGPT came out and months after that, companies like, for example, Grammarly, I use Grammarly, I love Grammarly. It started to use AI embedded into it, so the proxy automatically picked up that it was using generative AI in it, so it got blocked. And then because it got blocked, now you have to go through an approval process. And it's not that you don't want people to use it, it's more about, hey, we need to contain AI right now because we don't know everything about it. We don't know the security components about it. We don't know right now. And you have security professionals that are still learning about this because we're all not machine learning developers or AI developers, but we think in a secure manner, like, hey, we don't care about you innovating. We just want you to do it safely, right? We just want you to do it to where if we're working for a company, you're not about to expose the data or someone's going to attack because we already know there's automated attacks that happen and it has nothing to do with AI, right? So, evidence linker, control mapping engine, which is important when you're talking about policy as code, dashboard and reporting layer, CI/CD, and eval hooks. So, the risk register API design, you have your post, your get, right? You have the patch, okay, and you have the get risk IDs, the severities, and the risk export, excuse me. And here's the JSON. And this is just examples. I'm not saying you have to build it just like this, but this is just, again, it's just giving me a spec to work with, but it doesn't mean I'm going to build, this. So this makes it no longer a spreadsheet, which is important because we're trying to get away from paperwork, right? So when I think of like building out my artifacts for 42001 as a lead auditor, again, I'm like, how can I automate this? Because I don't want to do paperwork all the time. I want to show them that I'm not only a compliance professional, that I understand GRC, but I want to also show them that I come from an engineering side. I come from the side of an analyst, seeing threats, vulnerabilities, how I protected those vulnerabilities and those threats, how I responded to them. So, being that I can merge both of them together, it's easier to say, okay, this is why I would automate this to be a little bit easier for me and working with different teams that needed to provide information, right? Automated risk creation sources. So your risk register should accept risk events from the CI/CD pipeline. Again, this is something I build in my own. I call it a governance operating model, but this information needs to, from how I think about it, how I think about architecting it. If I already have built the CI/CD pipeline, already prepared for red teaming artifacts. So, the red team is definitely, a pen tester. They're going to give you reports and all that, but you can also, now you can also pull your own reporting from what happened and allow it to be evidence for those auditors outside of that report. And that report can pretty much help back up what was happening during that red teaming event, right? Eval engine. Um, you have your bias threshold, right? Hallucination, injection defense failures, right? Your monitoring layer, detected, retrieval violations, tool misuse attempt. Okay. Identity layer, which is very important. I've been an identity lead for a long time. Sometimes I have to think of my older jobs. I'm like, you know what? I was definitely a person who onboarded and offboarded. I was definitely a person who made sure people, got what they needed until I started getting into more of engineering, actual access reviews, and deploying SSO and managing it, like doing all of that, MFA, understanding different types of multi-factor. Identity layer is very important, especially when it comes to your AI. But this is important when we're talking about the risk register, right? Because that's important, especially again when you have to report to your CISO, whether it's on a weekly basis or however you guys set it up. But that information goes to that CISO so that he can report it right to your executive team, the VP, and then the VP maybe have to report it to the CEO because the CEO wants to know how the company is doing when it comes to that because the regulations. Certifications, those are very important to keep their business going and to keep everybody paid, right? So that's why it is important that if you can automate this, and continue to train it so that it can be accurate, you have less of work to do. And I remember literally seeing these reports being done by an Excel sheet, and it's a lot of work, especially when you have a lot of tasks and if you have a small team. That's why I think AI is great, especially for small teams. You have the risk scoring engine here, and it just dives deeper into using, this formula here, right? Risk score equals likelihood times the impact. So that will be also a part of it. You have the evidence linking, right? So evidence is code, right? And you can help prevent phantom risk, governance theater. So people just talk about governance, subjective entries, but everything becomes traceable, and that's how I think of not only architecting but building out a system using this, right? Not to make it so huge, but it's like these are the important things, especially again when I'm looking at 42,001 and then also unifying it with 27,001 or 27,701 or HIPAA or high trust or SOC 2, we want to make sure that that evidence is easily collectible and we can trace everything. So it gives you the visibility that you need. And there's platforms, I think Vanta, I came across. Um, it looks like their platform is kind of gearing towards pulling this information, right, especially through your pipeline. So you kind of want to think of it that way, like those GRC platforms need to be able to allow a GRC engineer to pull that information so it's easier now, right? Your lifecycle integration, executive and regulator reporting. Okay, and this is important again so that your CISOs and CIOs and your legal team or whoever needs to see this, it's available to them. Your CI/CD integration pattern, right? You have that. The governance is code alignment for your risk register becomes a control evidence engine. Okay, advanced capabilities. Now this is the phase two. So again, this doesn't have to be added. Again, I'm just building a lab, but um, it's telling me different phases to build in because I've been building a lot. So it gives me different phases or enhancing it, right? Based on what I've given it before. So risk versioning would be an enhancement, risk snapshotting, AI assisted risk summaries, right? And I build with Azure a lot because I'm just used to Azure, and I still think a lot of companies, especially healthcare systems, still use Azure. So the OpenAI can generate there, or you can just build you an AI agent using Microsoft Foundry as well for this. And just a positioning statement, so this is something if I'm talking to CTOs, CISOs, or regulators, it also helps me to, know what to say or how to explain what I'm doing a little bit better here.